Hello, my name is Aaron Plunkett, and I am part of the National Software School Data Analytics Cohort number 3. And my capstone project is an Overwatch Fantasy League and the analysis around that. So, how do things work? What is Overwatch and this Fantasy League? Overwatch is a video game where six players on each team face off against each other trying to complete objectives. You select a unique hero. There are 2 damage dealers, 2 tanks, and 2 supports on each team. And you want to be the first team to win 3 maps. So what is the Overwatch League? Well, it's a league structure similar to the NFL, MLB, where there are franchised teams that are connected to cities. You have rosters of 7 to 12 players, and you're competing for winnings greater than $1 million a season. So how does the fantasy league work? Well, it's similar to most fantasy leagues. You're selecting players from teams that are going to be competing in the following weekend's matches. And you also want to select players that are DPS, 2 tanks, 2 supports, just like actual teams are. Players have a cost, which is related to how well they've been doing for the season. So to increase variety in fantasy team players, there's a cost limit. So you want to keep your cost below that. Also, choosing which teams you think will win this weekend's matches. So how is fantasy score calculated? Well, the fastest way to complete objectives in Overwatch is to eliminate the enemy team. So I focused on stats most closely related to that objective, which is the amount of damage a player does, the amount of healing they do for their team, the amount of players they eliminate on the enemy team, minus a penalty for how many times they've died. Practically, how I do this is I have written a Python script that scrapes the web data from the official Overwatch League webpage and inserts that data into a Google Sheet where participants have selected their team members. So what are my project goals for this, and how does it relate to data analytics? Well, I really wanted to get familiar with some tools that are common in the data analytics field, and those, in this case, are Python and Google Sheets. But along with concepts like dashboards and web scraping and that kind of thing, but I also wanted to present this analysis in a way that's easily digestible for participants so that they can make educated choices on who they want on their team and who they think is going to win this coming weekend's matches. So let's take a look at the analysis, these dashboards that I just mentioned. So the player dashboard is dynamically generated. You select the player from a drop down up at the top, and then it will graph their cost and score over the season along with the league average cost and score, so you can compare it. And then you can also see some key statistics about that player, how likely they are to play, their highest and lowest cost, score, that kind of thing. And then when you're selecting who you think will win the coming weekend's matches, you can look at the team dashboard. Again, dynamically generated. You can see the match results for the season so far that involved this team, what those scores were, the current roster for that team, and some summary statistics. So each participant will enter their choices into a weekly sheet, and you will enter the name of the players you want on your team and who you think is going to win the matches. So once the script is run the coming week, it will generate these scores and put them into the Google Sheet, and so then you'll know who has the highest fantasy score for that previous weekend and who predicted the match results correctly. All of this information is then tabulated on the results dashboard, which shows who's winning for the season overall from the participants, who has predicted the most correctly. So with that, I think I can say that I safely achieved my goals for this project, which were getting familiar with both Python and Google Sheets, as well as concepts like the dashboard and web scraping. But where do I want to go from here? I'd like to insert the data into a database just instead of reading directly from a CSV, just to speed things up because Google Sheets slows down with this much information. And I'd also like to do a little more analysis around which characters a player plays and how well they play that character, and then maybe factor that into fantasy scores ultimately. But yeah, that's my capstone. As I said, I got all this information from the official Overwatch League Stats Lab webpage. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed it.